I never planned to notice her the way I did. It started in the most ordinary place, the laundromat on 8th Street, the one with the flickering neon sign and the vending machine that's always out of order. I dragged my bag of clothes there every Sunday, sit in the hard plastic chair, and watch the dryers spin. That's where she first spoke to me. Not in some grand way. Just a comment, a small correction. "You overloaded it," she said, nodding at my machine. I looked up. She was standing a little too close, holding a basket at her hip like it weighed nothing, though I could see the strain in her hand. Mid-40s, maybe? Her hair tied back, a cardigan slipping off one shoulder. Not trying to be noticed, but I noticed anyway. I stammered something about not knowing better. She gave a quiet laugh, shook her head, and went back to folding her towels with neat, deliberate movements. That was it. That's how it started. I began to time my Sundays around her. Not on purpose, at least that's what I told myself. But I'd slow down, pretend I had more clothes to wash than I did, just to sit across from her and listen to the hum of the machines between us. She'd sometimes glance up, catch me staring, and I'd look down at my phone like I had something important to check. Usually it was an unsent text I'd typed to no one in particular. Just words I couldn't bring myself to send. One day, she remembered my coffee. I didn't even know she knew. She walked in, set a paper cup beside me without a word. "2 sugars, no cream," she said. Then, almost apologetically, "You always look half asleep." I folded the napkin it came with, over and over, until it was nothing but soft creases in my hands. "Thanks," I murmured. Too soft, maybe, but she heard. It became routine. She'd ask small questions, what I studied, where I worked, why I always wore the same hoodie. Nothing deep, nothing that left her exposed. But sometimes I'd catch her staring out the window too long, forgetting to fold, the corners of her mouth tightening like she just remembered something painful. I never asked. And yet the silence between us grew heavier each week, like we both knew what was being left unsaid. She brushed past me once, her sleeve grazing mine, and I swear I felt it for hours afterward. My eyes kept flicking to her hands, slender, precise, veins tracing little blue maps. She folded my shirt once by mistake, then quickly placed it back, embarrassed. I wanted to say something. I didn't. Last night, the laundromat was nearly empty. Rain hammered the windows, and the lights buzzed overhead. She sat closer than usual, her basket untouched. "You ever keep a secret you can't tell anyone?" she asked, almost casually, though her eyes didn't meet mine. I swallowed, unsure. "All the time." She gave a short, almost bitter laugh. Then she leaned in, just enough for her words to cut through the steady hum of the dryers. "Close the door," she whispered. "I don't want anyone to hear." And just like that, the room felt smaller. The hum of the machines, the rain, even my own heartbeat, too loud. I wanted to ask what she meant. I wanted to ask what came next. But she just stared at me, waiting, as if the choice had already been handed over. That's where it begins. The following week, I almost didn't go. I told myself it was just laundry, nothing more. But by the time the clock struck 8, I was standing in front of the laundromat again, damp clothes weighing heavy on my shoulder. She was already there, hunched over the folding table. This time she didn't look up right away. Her hair was loose, falling around her face in a way that made her seem younger and older all at once. "You missed last Sunday," she said finally, eyes still on the towel she was folding. I hesitated. "Had too much work." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. She nodded like she knew. The silence stretched out, filled only by the low tumble of dryers. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "My son used to come here with me. Back when he still lived at home." I blinked. She'd never mentioned a son before. I tried to picture him, my age, maybe older. The thought tightened something in my chest. "Does he live nearby?" I asked. She shook her head. "California. Calls once in a while, when he remembers." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to say something, but all that came out was, "That must be hard." Her hands stilled on the towel. She looked at me then, really looked, as if testing whether I meant it. I held her gaze longer than I should have, my throat tight. I thought about telling her something in return, something to even the ground between us. Instead, I muttered, "I used to text my mom every day when I moved out." Stopped after a while. Didn't know what to say. Her expression softened, just a fraction. We don't realize how much the small things matter until they stop. We felt quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It carried weight, like a bridge half built between us. Later, when her basket tipped slightly, I instinctively reached to steady it. My hand brushed against hers. Just a second, maybe less, but she froze. I pulled back quickly, mumbling something about the floor being uneven. My face burned. The risk of it all suddenly pressed on me, the age, the gap between our worlds, the way this would look if anyone walked in right now. I imagined her son's voice, angry, asking why someone my age thought he had any right to stand so close to his mother. I folded the same shirt twice, lost in the thought. She noticed. "You're distracted," she said, half teasing. I tried to laugh, but it came out awkward. "Maybe I'm just not good at laundry." She let the silence linger before answering, her voice low. "Or maybe you're thinking too much." That landed heavier than I expected. When I left that night, she followed me to the door. The rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and cool. She reached out suddenly, tugged at the sleeve of my hoodie, straightening it like it mattered. "Good night," she said simply. But her fingers brushed my wrist before letting go. It was nothing. It was everything. Sunday came again. I told myself not to expect her. Maybe she'd change her schedule, maybe she'd disappear altogether. But when I walked in, she was already there, sitting on the folding table instead of standing, her basket still untouched. "Thought you'd skip this week," she said, almost teasing, but her voice didn't carry the smile. I shrugged. Didn't feel right. That hung between us. Neither of us moved to break it. We finished our loads in silence. She didn't fold this time, just sat, legs crossed, watching the dryers turn. I joined her without asking, perching on the other end of the table. After a while, she spoke. "You're young." I almost laughed, but stopped. "That's not news." She tilted her head, studying me like I was a problem she couldn't solve. "It should be simple. But it's not." Her words sank into the hum of the machines. I thought about answering, but the truth was tangled in my chest. Instead, I picked at a loose thread on my hoodie. "You don't have to." I started. Then stopped. She turned slightly, waiting. "You don't have to keep pushing me away if you don't want to," I said finally, the words quiet, nearly lost in the sound of tumbling clothes. Her face shifted, something fragile flickering across it. "It's not about want." I looked at her then, really looked. Lines at the corner of her eyes, hair falling out of its clip, hands folded too tightly in her lap. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with youth. "Then what is it?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. The silence stretched. Finally, she exhaled, low and unsteady. "My son, he's about your age." That landed hard. Not sharp, but heavy. Like she'd been carrying it for weeks and had just set it down between us. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. I stared at the floor, at the scuff marks near my shoes. "I'm not him," I murmured. Her gaze flicked to me, sharp, startled. "I know," she whispered. "That's the problem." We sat there, the distance between us smaller than ever, and yet impossibly wide. My hand twitched, wanting to reach for hers, but I held back. Outside, rain started again, soft against the windows. The sound filled the laundromat like another heartbeat. "I keep thinking," she said, voice trembling now. "If anyone saw us sitting here, what they'd assume. What they'd say. I don't know if I could." She broke off. The quiet pressed in. I thought of leaning closer, of ending the space between us with something undeniable. My pulse hammered at the thought. Instead, I asked, barely above a whisper, "Do you want me to stop coming?" The question hung there, suspended, everything balanced on her silence. She didn't answer my question that night. Just gathered her basket, said a quiet "good night," and slipped out before I could press. I waited the next Sunday. And the one after that. The laundromat stayed empty. Her machine silent. At first, I told myself it was a scheduling thing. Maybe work, maybe family. But the third week stretched into a fourth, and the small hope I kept folding into each trip began to wear thin. One evening, restless, I walked past her building. Lights on in her window. A shadow moved inside, then stilled. I almost knocked. My fist hovered near the door. But I kept walking. Days blurred. The silence grew louder. I caught myself checking my phone more often, though she'd never once texted me. I typed out messages anyway, words I'd never send. "Are you okay? Do I stop coming? Did I do something wrong?" Each one deleted before my thumb could press send. The next time I saw her, it wasn't at the laundromat. It was at the grocery store, in the aisle with the canned soup. She froze when she spotted me, a jar in her hand, as if she'd been caught somewhere she didn't belong. "You disappeared," I said before I could stop myself. Her grip on the jar tightened. "I've been busy." It was the kind of answer that ends things, not explains them. I should have walked away. Instead, I asked, "Busy with what?" Her jaw shifted, a flicker of something passing across her face. Then she set the jar back down. "My ex came by. He stayed a while." The words hit harder than I expected. Not sharp jealousy, but something dull, disorienting. Like I'd been standing on a floor I thought was solid, only to find it shifting under me. She didn't elaborate. Just stared at the shelves, waiting for me to take the hint. I wanted to ask if she let him back in. If that's why she'd gone quiet. If the nights I sat waiting in the laundromat meant nothing compared to an old ring, old memories, old promises. But the questions crowded my throat and stayed there. Instead, I nodded stiffly. "Right. Makes sense." Her eyes flicked to mine then, searching. There was something like apology there, or maybe pity. I couldn't tell which stung more. We parted in silence. My card half empty, hers full. That night, I wrote a message longer than all the ones before. "I don't care about him. I just want to know if you meant any of it. If you meant me." I stared at it for too long, thumb hovering. Then I deleted it, screen going dark in my hand. The laundromat glowed across the street when I walked home. Lights on. Machines empty. One chair waiting. I kept moving. It happened on a Tuesday. Not the laundromat, not by chance, but her doorstep. I hadn't planned it. My legs carried me there before my head could catch up. I stood for a long time, hand hovering, heart hammering like I'd run miles. Finally, I knocked. She opened the door slowly, like she already knew it was me. No cardigan this time, just a plain t-shirt, hair undone. She looked tired. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I know," I answered. "But I didn't know how else to." I stopped. Words felt too heavy, too clumsy. She stepped aside. Just enough for me to enter. The air smelled faintly of tea leaves and detergent. The small apartment was quiet, except for the ticking of a clock somewhere down the hall. We sat in her kitchen, not across from each other but side by side at the table. 2 mugs between us, steam curling upward. She didn't meet my eyes. "I thought you'd stopped," she said finally. "I tried." That made her glance at me. Brief, sharp. Like testing for truth. The silence stretched, filled only by the ticking clock. My fingers tapped against the mug, restless. "I don't know what you want from me," I said. Her shoulders lifted, sank. "Neither do I." I let that sit. Because it was honest. Because it was all I'd been afraid of hearing. She took a sip of tea, then set the cup down carefully, both hands lingering on the porcelain as if it steadied her. "When my ex showed up," I let him stay 2 nights. And the whole time, all I could think about was you sitting there, waiting for me in that stupid laundromat. I hated myself for it. Her voice cracked just slightly at the end. I swallowed hard. So why push me away? Because this doesn't make sense. She turned then, eyes finally locking with mine. You're young. You could leave tomorrow and not think twice. And me? I'd be the one left wondering why I let it happen. Her honesty cut deeper than silence ever could. I wanted to argue. To tell her she was wrong. But the truth was, I didn't know if she was. I shifted closer, not touching, but close enough for her to feel it. Maybe it doesn't have to make sense. Her breath caught. She stared at me, searching, as if there might be an answer written somewhere in my face. You don't know what you're asking, she whispered. Then tell me. The room felt smaller, the ticking clock unbearably loud. My hand inched forward, stopping just short of hers. Waiting. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she turned her palm up, letting my fingers graze hers. Not holding. Just touching. Her eyes softened, fragile but steady. Okay, she breathed. And for the first time, it felt like either of us was hiding. It didn't change overnight. We didn't suddenly become something we could name. Instead, it was quieter than that, weeks of small shifts, unnoticed by anyone else. I still did laundry on Sundays. Sometimes she joined me, sometimes she didn't. But even when she didn't, she'd leave a thermos on the table by the door. Jasmine tea, still warm at 8:47 a.m. A small reminder. Other times I'd bring her black coffee. 2 sugars, no cream. She'd pretend not to care, but I'd catch the faintest smile when she sipped. The conversations grew easier. Not big confessions, but pieces of ourselves we hadn't shared before. She told me about her son, how he used to sit on the very same folding table, swinging his legs while she folded sheets. I told her about college, how sometimes I paused mid-text because I didn't know if anyone was really on the other end. It wasn't dramatic. Just ordinary. Ordinary in a way that felt new. There were days she pulled back, her silence heavier than usual. And nights I questioned myself, wondering if I was just another passing moment in her long life. But then, she'd reach for my hand while we walked, or straighten my sleeve before saying goodbye. Small gestures, each one anchoring me again. One evening, we sat on a park bench near her building, bags of groceries at our feet. The streetlights buzzed, moths circling the glow. She leaned her head against my shoulder, no words. My chest tightened, not from nerves anymore, but from something steadier. This feels strange, she murmured. Strange good or strange bad? She let the silence stretch before answering. Strange good. That was enough. Months slipped by like that. No declarations, no plans carved in stone. Just presence. Just choosing each other, again and again, in small ways. I still thought about the risk sometimes, the gap in years, the questions people might ask. But when I sat across from her at the kitchen table, steam rising from 2 mugs, or when her hand brushed mine in the narrow grocery aisle, the noise outside faded. One Sunday, I caught myself folding my laundry the way she did, precise, careful corners. She noticed, laughed softly, and shook her head. You're learning. And I realized, so was she. It wasn't perfect. But it was ours. And that was enough. On quiet nights, when the machines hummed and the air smelled faintly of detergent, she'd glance at me, her eyes steady, and whisper something I'd never forget. Close the door. I don't want anyone to hear. Not because it was forbidden anymore, but because it was finally just ours. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?